whatever works a year ago, don't depend on it working in the same way today. Analytics people had to get really scrappy really quick, and it's not going to go backwards. It's going to keep going.
This holiday season, marketers are facing their biggest decisions at a point of maximum pressure. Delivery fatigue and budget crunch are real, and it's leading to complacency around creative effectiveness in digital marketing, and that could make or break campaigns. So, what can you do about it? Well, you should read the automated creative white paper called Compounding Creative, an urgent Q4 wake-up call. So you can get this on this bit.ly link, which is bit.ly/Q4 Xmas 2023. So that is bit.ly, that's lowercase, then / capital Q, number 4, capital X, capital M, capital A, capital S, and then 2023. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Wallerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, the creative effectiveness ad tech platform. But today we are doing a podcast that regularly interviews industry leaders about their journey and their vision for the future of the industry. I'm on a call with Cate McVeigh, who is European Senior Marketing Analytics Manager at Mars. Cate, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, could you give the audience a bit of background?
Yeah. Hiya, Tom. So a wee bit of background about me. I started a marketing degree focused on creative. That was very much where my head was at. But I won't say how old I am, but if you go far enough back when data started to be a wee bit more interesting in advertising, started to get into that space. And I've kind of just played with different roles, different parts of the industry over the last kind of 16, 17 years. So analytics, product management, media planning. I've done agency side, I've done platform side with TikTok, I've done brand side in a few places. So I am sitting as a little bit of an unusual person with a bit of a varied background. But yeah, still with the love of advertising at the heart of it.
So you're basically a nightmare in any meeting, right? You go, well, when I was at TikTok or when I was at an agency.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where it's like, if we can't get everyone else in the call, maybe Cate can wear a few different hats for everyone else.
So in that kind of patchwork quilt of a career, what has been the best investment of your own time, your own energy, or your own money in your career? Yeah,
I mean, I think it probably kind of plays into that, but I would say taking the time and the energy to keep learning something new. So I really enjoy not having the same day over and over again, just to keep my mind going more than anything else. But putting in the energy to learn new skills, because the constant shift of what we've got within the industry right now, and even, it has no signs of slowing down. Taking a wee bit of time at the evenings and weekends, learning additional things, spending time with other stakeholders that you maybe wouldn't have normally thought about, I think will make you better at your current job, but also is just going to open up a lot more different paths and kind of give you just maybe a slightly different set of experiences or perspectives than you're used to. So take the time to do it at any age. Pick up a coding textbook, go and sit with a creative team, whatever it needs to be to just, get you out of your comfort zone.
So how do you decide what to learn? Are you just like, I quite fancy learning how to write copy or code? Or do you have like a kind of a specific set of things that you want to learn over time?
I think it comes from a few different places. So sometimes it'll be a meeting that I wasn't expecting was going to be quite as interesting as it was. And, it'll maybe spur something off in my head that in a direction I hadn't thought about previously. So it might be where we're thinking about pricing and how that works for media. And then I'll kind of go into a bit of a deep dive into that and really kind of understand how they all play together for the customer. But conferences are really important too. I think listening to podcasts, good timing. We're on one right now. But I do find that actually kind of also throws ideas my way of what we could try differently, what I should be thinking about. Gen AI is one of the things that keeps coming up constantly. And MadFest this year, I think about 50% of the content was about that. But really helps you kind of know where the direction of the industry is going to be going and just keeping on top of it.
So, what is your top data-driven marketing tip? What is that one silver bullet bit of advice that you find yourself sharing most often that's most useful?
Yeah, it's probably a bit of advice that people don't want to hear from an analytical person, but whatever works a year ago, don't depend on it working in the same way today. So, and what I mean by that, there's a few different areas there. Data availability is really different. Regulations keep shifting. Customers want more privacy. You got to be on your toes. You have to be a bit scrappy. So, if you say, but I did this with a platform a year ago, why wouldn't it work in the same way? If you're not constantly keeping your mind open to what those shifts are going to be and knowing when they're going to happen, it's probably going to pull you back. So this is a very hard space if you want a really easy life where you can learn one thing and keep it going for 40 years, but if it's a space where you're really open to changing that perspective, like almost on a daily basis, it's a great space to be. It's so deeply uncomfortable for people though. So I'd really encourage people to just like constantly not rely on the past.
So can you give me an example of something that worked a year ago that doesn't work today?
Yeah, I mean, if I think about things like conversions, so where, you've got direct to consumer sites, you've got great platforms, you've got, Meta, you've got YouTube and everything, and where you were able to, in the not so distant past, understand more about customers that were coming in. There was more on the last click side. Multi-touch attribution was a bit easier. When Apple made their shift with iOS 14.5 and decided to protect customer data in a better way, that really shifted what you were able to see with Apple devices, which I'm really in favor of, if I'm honest, as a customer more than anything else. But it really shifted how people had to think about performance marketing and what they had to use that was not actualized, but that was modeled numbers, or that they had to maybe let go of some of the tools or the products they'd previously used. Really difficult, I think, for some companies to handle, but analytics people had to get really scrappy really quick. And it's not going to go backwards. It's going to keep going. There's going to be more differential customer privacy. So, everyone needs to get comfortable with this.
So we're going to move on now to your shiny new object, which is neurodiversity, which of course is nothing new, but it's a much more new topic than it was. So why is neurodiversity your shiny new object?
So I am neurodiverse myself. I have dual type ADHD, which means I'm also a nightmare to be in meetings with for another reason. But it's one of the things I think has become particularly dear to my heart recently, because there's a lot of things that have been shifting in the media about it. There's actually quite a lot of people in advertising that have a neurodiversity. And I think a lot of managers, a lot of leaders are struggling to understand how to get the best out of it, how to support people in the right way. Not a lot still understood about it. So I think it's an important topic to call out and see what we can do to actually unlock some of those superpowers.
So how do you unlock your ADHD superpower?
So a few different ways. I mean, one of the things for me is if I have a deadline, it will be like a motor sitting underneath me. I will, do anything I possibly can to hit that. Without a deadline, could be a bit of a nightmare for me to decide what the focus needs to be, especially if you've got a lot of different things happening. So, chunking things out, making sure there's deadlines on smaller pieces to get to the overall project is really important for me. But I think the other side is genuinely helping my colleagues around me understand, the style of work, what will help me kind of drive things better, where maybe more of my skill sets are, like scenario planning. ADHD people will think through so many different perspectives on any given topic. They can be a wee bit of a jack of all trades, but sometimes meaning they're a generalist, which you can probably see from what I mentioned about my career as well. So Yeah, I think having those deadlines in place and helping others understand how to get the best out of me are the two things that I've been leaning on.
So how do you work with your own deadlines versus an external deadline? Does that still work the same way?
I would probably chunk it out into about 20 little deadlines just to make it a wee bit easier. So I'll still get it done either way, but it can become really overwhelming sometimes when naturally your way of doing things is the procrastination side of things or the hyper focus right at the very end. So making sure you've got the smaller deadlines and actually even asking people to set that accountability, physically writing it down, making it more open of what those need to be is helpful as well. It also helps you manage the expectations around it because if priorities come up, some neurodiverse folk will work through the night to get it done as opposed to, checking in to see, can we shift anything around? So I think over that course of time, and certainly with managing neurodiverse people as well, trying to make it really, really clear what prioritizations look like. So we're kind of taking care of those people and I'm taking care of myself is massively important.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com.
So this is fascinating to me. How do you articulate it to your colleagues? Do you, like, when you meet someone for the first time and you're working on a project together, do you go, look, I've got, sorry, I can't remember the exact, you said dual ADHD, sorry for not capturing that perfectly, but do you say that, look, this is my neurodiversity, I love working this way, are you flexible, or do you just let them work it out?
It's a really good question because there's a wee bit of stigma attached to it, I would say still. I would say some people I work with now previously don't know at all. Others, are mindful of it on an everyday basis. I would say you probably have to build up a bit of trust. You have to have that psychological safety to feel like you can say it. I actually think Mars has been really good. Neurodiversity is absolutely it's on the topic list for their diversity and inclusion more widely. I'm on the internal working group on it. When you have that psychological safety, I feel like you can say it to pretty much anyone. But I would say if I'm going to work very closely with someone on a project, I probably will say to them things like, if I interrupt you, I'm not trying to be rude. It might be because I'm really excited about what to say next. And you're saying the energy come out, the passion come out. Another thing might be, I might jump topic to topic quickly because I've gone from A to Z in my head already without verbalizing it to you. But stop me if you're not following that kind of train of thought. But also throw different topics at me because I actually like having variation within things. So you could throw 10 different things within it and that will be okay, because working on the same thing constantly for long periods of time can get a little bit difficult to maintain focus. So variation helps.
So this seems strange to me, right? Because I would like to know that on day one for me personally. Like, I had a really interesting experience with a new business lead. We were getting on quite well. I'm like, we're going to work together and stuff, all that usual conversation. And she said, Tom, what color are you? And I was like, yeah, what? and there's that, I can't remember the name of the structure. Like, you're a red, blue, a yellow,
yeah,
or green, or all that stuff. And she goes, Tom, I'm a red. And I'm like, be brilliant, be bright, be gone. And you know what? I was like, right, cool. So then every single interaction with her from that point onwards was defined by that. So it's like, I'm going to send her an email. It's going to have like 6 words in it. I'm not going to say, hello, how are you? Do you know what I mean? Just like, but I want to know this, yes or no. And that interaction worked perfectly. But I think that certainly from a sales perspective, you tend to come at it a bit yellow, a bit like, hey, sunshine, how are you? But if that's not someone's color, they don't want to be talked to like that, then it must be the most frustrating thing in the world. So I want to get more into your insecurity around needing psychological safety.
Yeah.
Because it's who you are, and you're on a podcast talking about it, so you're not shy. So is there something in working culture? Is there something in society?
Yeah.
Is there something in advertising that means that you need that safety before sharing, like a really important thing?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few of those different things. I mean, recently, a Panorama documentary about ADHD specifically and overdiagnosis and almost vilifying people who are diagnosed with it or treating it in different ways. Really difficult for people with ADHD because you know that a lot of people who don't understand it fully are going to sit and watch something like that for an hour and then take away a very singular focused perspective. I know a lot of people I know with ADHD felt really unsafe after that. So things like that are difficult. And I think it's been vilified in the press a bit, even just 2023, this year. There's also things like there's a medication shortage right now for one of the largest prescribed ADHD drugs in the world. And it's really difficult for a lot of people in work who are used to having that on a daily basis and don't have that at their disposal right now. And with a lot of other medication, to come off something very, very quickly would be considered quite dangerous. Support would be there, but a lot of people don't want to share that they are medicated for something like neurodiversity. And I think even from a kind of working relationship perspective, some things have been used as jokes in the past. So you could have someone who might be particularly introverted and someone says, I bet they're on the autism spectrum. Or someone being slightly disorganized for a meeting, they probably have ADHD. Or they have typos in their emails, maybe they're dyslexic. And I think because those jokes are almost used as I made a mistake, isn't this funny? I might have this condition. It still is quite prevalent in the workplace today. Again, I actually haven't seen this quite so much on the Mars side. I feel like it's been extremely supportive, but that does stop you sharing quite a lot. And I know that it is quite hurtful to a lot of people who tend to mask on a daily basis what's going on.
So is there any kind of agency groups industry groups for people with ADHD that you're part of or you could recommend to someone who's listening to this podcast?
So as I said, I'm part of the neurodiversity group within Mars. I'm sure there are pockets within the industry, but I think there need to be more. And I think it's a little bit around, do people want to sign up if it's wider industry, if they don't know if it's fully supported to put themselves out there? So as you said, I'm not shy. I'm happy to go to a podcast and talk about it because I don't think it's a negative thing. I think my brain just works differently, but it's also made me good at what I do. So I also kind of feel like it's important for people with a neurodiversity to be celebrated a little bit more, that actually there are really clear strengths there.
Oh, I think so massively. And I had a really interesting chat with a partner of ours. He said to me that someone on his team came up to him and said, I think you've got ADHD. I'm trained to observe it. And then he looked into it and he realized that absolutely he did. And he said it's completely changed his work life, but it's changed the way that I talk to him, because I invariably see him at networking events. And the last thing he wants to do is talk to me for half an hour. He wants to talk to me for 35 seconds and then do that with everyone else. I'm like, hi mate, how you doing? What's going on? Brilliant, cool, see you later. Whereas I would never talk to someone else like that, because I assume that would be rude, to palm him off. But actually, I know that he wants to fire off like a rocket around the room, having similar interactions, and he's brilliant at it. So I'm all for getting that stuff out on the table. But I understand with those kind of negative comments and using it as the butt of jokes, that makes it difficult for folk. But Cate, we're at the end of the podcast, and it's been brilliant. I've loved it, and I've learned a lot. And thank you for challenging me with these and helping me understand more about this topic of neurodiversity. So if someone wants to get in touch with you about this or more about your role or whatever it is, where would you like them to do that? And what makes a brilliant message to you that you would actually reply to?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, I will always look at. Unfortunately, it's one of those ones I'll probably see on a daily basis. I think a good message is, tell me what you want from me. Like, what can I help with? What can I do for you? It just makes it that bit easier for me to know that, it's going to be value for you back. So that would be a great way to kick off that conversation. But I'm really open to talking to people about this and multiple other things as well. But I know people are struggling with this right now as well, especially if they're pre-diagnosis or early diagnosis. I'm more than happy to chat as someone who, has a lived experience. I'm not a psychiatrist, but more than happy to share.
Brilliant. Cate, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi. Just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.